Hello everyone, James here. Now, one of the features I'd love YouTube to bring in, assuming they haven't brought it in already, so I do need to check this, is the ability to add text to videos on screen after the fact. So I could therefore provide an on-screen update to news rather than have to make an entirely new video updating the situation. But anyway, that's the main difference between text news and video news, is that video news is kind of frozen in time and can't be updated. But if you're interested in seeing the original video, which is now unlisted, I'll link it in the description. But anyway, the past 18 or so hours before I made that first video, a lot more has happened since, including interviews and everything else and reports. So I'm going to give you the timeline of events best I can, and also ask the question, does Nixon Newell's explanation, the former Tegan Nox in WWE, about how they walked out of AEW Collision regarding a booking disagreement make anything better whatsoever, or has it made everything worse, or kind of just on the level? So if you already watched the first video, give it a couple of minutes, because I'm going to add some background information and then kind of skip to the second half of the video where new stuff is going to be brought in. So anyway, Tegan Nox, for people who don't know, that's Nixon Newell's former name in WWE, was part of the WWE NXT brand for several years, and also the main roster, I think 2021 to 2024 as well. So she was actually with the company for 8 separate years, 2017 to 2024. A rough review of her time in WWE can be sort of explained thusly. Absolutely blighted with injuries, including tearing up a knee, including her ACL twice when she was in NXT. To give you an example of how long she was out for in NXT, and keep in mind this is when they were doing house shows, she wrestled about 70 matches in 4 years. So anyway, then the main roster, she was mostly an underneath talent on SmackDown, drafted to Raw, but then she was released before she ever debuted on the Red brand. And then Tegan was brought back like a year or so later. I think this must have been during COVID cuts, I guess. But she was brought back and then kind of not particularly pushed. She was on the roster here, there, and everywhere. And then she was released November 2024 after what can only be called an unspectacular run with WWE, I think it would be fair to say. Still, her tag team partner in wrestling and also in life, they're in a relationship in real life, and if that wasn't obvious enough, they practically look the same now, is Miranda Alize. Now, basically an indie worker who had made some Ring of Honor appearances, just a handful, but nothing else of note. So anyway, the reason I bring this up is because we have one wrestler who hasn't done much of note in the business so far, and then there's the former Tegan Nox, now known as Nixon Newell, who just a few months ago was lamenting in an interview that since she was released by WWE, the independent work was not exactly flowing her way, shall we say. In fact, she described her situation as like a nightmare, quote. Anyway, back to that in a minute. Nixon and Miranda debuted in AEW as a tag team on episode, actually wrestling, they debuted the week before, on episode 117 of AEW Collision. That was broadcast on, I think, November 1st. Now, they wrestled Bayne and Marina. You don't know me, Shafir. Those were their opponents. And as you can imagine, because Nixon and Miranda are basically two no-names in AEW, and Megan and Marina are among the bigger stars in the AEW women's division, Megan and Marina dominated proceedings, and in quick fashion, about 2 minutes 26 or so, clean in the middle. And if you don't believe me, here's a quick snippet. So Megan Bayne gets the pin. And the reason I want to play that is just Marina Shafir's Mother's Milk finisher is maybe tied for the worst finisher in the AEW women's division, apart from like the Monet Maker. It's like that's awful finisher. Anyway, that's not the point. So they were basically brought in as enhancement talent, which is kind of what they are, especially considering they are not actually signed to AEW. Compared to the first video, I actually researched that and found out that to be the case. Anyway, we're going to go to the Fightful report here. Now, there's actually more that I've got written down, but I'm just going to leave that on the screen. According to Fightful Select, AEW sources claim that Bayne was visibly upset with Newell and Miranda Alize during their match on Collision. The tension wasn't just storyline, it played out in real time because of a breakdown in communications mid-match. Quote, the frustration on Megan Bayne's face during the match was legitimate, as she was frustrated with what appeared to be a lack of cooperation on some of the spots, a source said. AEW reportedly had internal concerns about how the match was structured, especially since Bayne was being positioned as a powerhouse. Some sources were puzzled by the decision to book her in a way that had her selling a fence for unsigned talents like Newell and Alize. Word, once again, quote, Word made its way around the locker room that Newell wasn't happy that the match was being constructed as is. One of the points of contentions was said to be that Megan Bayne selling for Newell and Alize, which at that point was establishing a new dominant team, wasn't really a decision Megan Bayne could make on her own, the report added. Now, you can see on the screen there, it said Nixon Newell denied this when Fightful reached out. But if there's any truth to that report, the writing might have already been on the wall for them in AEW. But anyway, let's go to AEW Collision this past Saturday. A match had been set up between Nixon Newell and Miranda Alize versus JT, Anna Jay, and Ty Melo. Or would it be Anna? Or would it be Jay Ty? I don't know. A couple of weeks earlier in a backstage promo, and if you don't believe me, for goodness sake, there's a screen grab of it. Anyway, we're going to go to the initial report from PW Insider now, which I'm going to read from. There was change to tonight's AEW Collision after Nixon Newell and Miranda Alize refused to lose in their second appearance for the promotion, PW Insider has learned. The duo was scheduled to put over Ty Melo and Anna Jay, but balked at the booking because... Is it Tay Melo? I always call it Ty Melo anyway. If I've got it wrong, whatever. The duo left the taping about an hour before bell time and was replaced by Hyan and Maya World. Two more names, I don't know if I'm pronouncing right, but hopefully I'm near enough. PWInsider.com is told that AEW was appreciative of World and Hyan stepping up and that each gained points internally. Alize took to Twitter. We'll get to the Twitter thing in a minute, saying they had so much to say. She also retweeted comments about the team needing credible wins. Once again, I'll get to that in a minute. And they also... remind us, Mike Johnson reminds us from PW Insider that Tegan Nox, the former Tegan Nox, said it was like a nightmare, her lack of bookings over the past few months. Anyway, or since she left WWE, it should be said. Now, a bit more on that. Nixon and Amanda had been flown to AEW Dynamite this past Wednesday, but there was nothing for them to do, and they didn't appear on the show. So now they were going to go to wrestle and get to wrestle on AEW Collision, but the problem apparently stemmed not from the fact that they were asked to lose, as initially reported in the PW Insider article, but about the amount of time and maybe even the booking of the match that they were going to be given. So here's a quote. This is from the Twitch stream. I don't have the exact quote from the Twitch stream, but here is the transcript. We decided collectively as a partnership, a couple, as wrestlers independently, that 3 minutes wasn't going to benefit no one in this match, Newell said. So, I mean, reading that literally, that meant that it was going to benefit everybody in this match because of a double negative. But anyway, they decided that after the promo they did on JT, that wouldn't benefit anybody. Now, funnily enough, I actually think it would have benefited some people. It would have benefited Anna Jay and Ty Melo. But, it wouldn't have benefited the two people who they actually wanted it to benefit, themselves, of course. So they basically complained loud enough backstage, so we believe at this point, that their appearance on Collision was scrubbed and they were told to go home. Or, in their exact words, they were free to go home. Newell specifically was saying that they were given the okay to go home, and on the Twitch live stream, Newell said repeatedly throughout the stream that there was, quote once again, no bad blood on either side. That quote's going to come up in a minute. Now, I don't know if this makes everything better or worse, or basically kind of the same, I suppose. Now, I hinted at it in the last video I made, but I'll be more explicit here. Tegan Nox, just a few months ago, was publicly complaining about the lack of opportunities she was getting on the independent circuit post-WWE release. Considering she was a part of the WWE for 7 whole years, 2017 to 2024, well, maybe 6, I guess, because she was gone for a year, and was still struggling to get bookings, that's all I need to know to say that she's not in particularly in demand, and she needs the work. Now, Miranda Alize, I guess, is also not particularly in demand, and she's never been signed to a major promotion, and I suspect she also needs the work. They keep sending those gimmicks in the mail they call bills, as Steve Austin would say. But anyway, here's what I see. We've got what is, I see, a beggars versus choosers situation here. Now, you, Nixon and Amanda, are 2 unsigned wrestlers asked to put over AEW stars. Now, it gets a little better than that. They're not just straight enhancement talent, because they also got a promo to build up to the JT match a couple of weeks earlier. Now, yes, they were going to lose, because look at them compared to... they're a pair of no-names, quite frankly, as compared to a lot of the established names in AEW. You're not just going to put them over, completely. Anyway, imagine if they'd caught on And they did a second match, and then they were given more matches. They were happy to do the job. They were happy to work. And then eventually, I'm sure they would have got, some wins, more gigs, more bookings, and who knows, maybe even AEW contracts in the future as well, if they were good independent contractors, not employees. And also, here's something else. I mean, yeah, they're fine. At least in the initial, they were hardly going to be pushed as championship material. But it's steady work and also a fairly fresh audience to get over in front of. The more your name is pushed on television, the more you will be able to, after you leave, monetize said name on conventions and for signings and whatever else, as well as the independent wrestling gigs. So basically, on their second night, basically, with the company, I know there was 3, but let's say wrestling, they whined and complained about having to put over a actual name team in 3 minutes and were told that they could go home. So I know they're spinning, it's like, we're free to go home, but I'm sort of reading it as, you're basically told to go home, there's nothing for you to do, so go away. That's not playing the long game here, and I would suggest that complaining about the match was highly ill-advised in the long term for them. Now, somehow they got to the conclusion that there's no bad blood on either side. Well, my feeling is, if it's true and there really was no bad blood, if there's no bad blood on their side, which I'll question in a minute, but if there's no bad blood on the Tony Khan AEW side, what I suspect that means is that Tony Khan or whoever in AEW found you so eminently expendable, and apparently they had little trouble replacing you because Hyan and Maya World, they ended up replacing, at the last minute, and apparently they scored major points backstage for willing to step up and take the match and do the loss as asked. And, their stock will have risen in the company as 2 good soldiers. Now, also, their match, Maya World and Hyan, their match with JT went 1 minute 50, so I guess the 3 minutes Miranda and Nixon Newell were offered also included entrances. But be that as it may, if there was no bad blood, then why did Miranda start retweeting supportive messages basically complaining about how she and Nixon were being jobbed out? In fact, here we go. I presume this match will be against Tegan Nox and her girlfriend, which was meant to happen last week. But yeah, I agree. They could do some credible wins and not just quick squash matches. That's a retweet. There's a few of these here. I don't understand why the F in making them go up against local competitors just for 4.5 minute squash. Would help if the team hadn't already been squashed last week, etc. That's a few retweets from Amanda Alize, which tells me that, well, if there was no bad blood, why are you retweeting those things? And if it's not about the losing, why are you retweeting several messages complaining about them losing on the first night? And once again, the reason they lost on the first night is because they were going against a much bigger name team who were already being pushed. You were brought in essentially as enhancement talent. That's what it is. It is a job. That's where the word jobbed comes out, or jobbed out. I mean, you're doing a job, and you're not signed either. Anyway, we'll move on. So it looks like, for what I'm seeing, just the optics, like she was fairly unhappy. These are all posted, by the way, or retweeted very shortly after they walked out. I did the maths as far as the hours go, and I think it was like a couple of hours after they must have left the building, somewhere around there, that she started retweeting these. So she was obviously, no bad blood, but she was obviously upset enough that she was hunting out these messages and then retweeting them as a sort of protest almost. Anyway, yeah, fine, she's not happy with being offered what she considered, Amanda Alize, or maybe even Nixon as well, inadequate television time, I guess. But more specifically, it looks like that she wanted to win the match and not lose 2 matches in a row. Once again, she's retweeting those messages. Anyway, they also made a retirement claim on this Twitch stream. This is my last 2 years in wrestling. We're already a year gone, so I want to have fun this last year, she said. This is Nixon Newell, I believe. It is what it is. So they clearly wanted to be treated as a credible tag team. That's fine. The problem is they're not a credible tag team because 1 is barely getting bookings and 2, barely anyone's heard of it. So why would you put them over, once again, more credible teams with name value in AEW? What essentially have either of them done to make fans believe they should be winning, women's tag team tournament matches, or beating or even being booked on the same level as someone like an Anna Jay or a Megan Bayne or a Marina Shafir, let alone, even top names like Mercedes Moné, Toni Storm, etc., Steph Datlander? I think that's really the issue here. It's the main character syndrome. It's something that keeps coming up in pro wrestling time and again, I guess. And that decision could well have cost them some steady work that, once again, citing the Tegan Nox interview or Nixon Newell interview from months ago, they're somewhat desperate for regular work here at this point. So anyway, to end this thought, I thought we would go to a tweet from Taya Valkyrie. It's Valkyrie. I'm getting confused between Live Valkyrie and how you pronounce all these names. Anyway, she dropped this early this morning, my time, so I want to quote it for you. At the end of the day, this is a business. It is our job. It doesn't matter if you get 1 minute or 45. You make every second in front of those fans and on TV count. It is an honour and a privilege to be part of the show. I've been doing this for 15 years, and I've been in every position, good, bad, champ, enhancement. And every single aspect of the show, small or big, is important. Make it count, and that's my TED Talk. That's a great attitude to have, especially if you're a promoter, kind of thing. It's the kind of person you want on your team, not someone you bring in as enhancement talent, basically, and they start complaining. Now, normally, I would say that Amanda and Nixon have burned their last bridge here with a major American promotion. But the problem with that theory is that this is Tony Khan, and he isn't like any other major wrestling promoter that came before him. I can genuinely see him bringing Nixon and Miranda back for some maybe Ring of Honor shows or whatnot down the line. I mean, it's all possible. It's a long shot. I kind of doubt he will. But in this case, I really wouldn't be surprised. But for anybody else being sent home after you've just been brought into AEW because you wouldn't do the match that you were booked to do when you've got really no fallback whatsoever, it seems. I'm presuming at this point, but I can't see any realistic fallback where they'd actually make a lot of money in wrestling. But people have been comparing the situation to the Mercedes Moné, Sasha Banks and Naomi walking out of WWE a few years earlier. But here's the difference. The difference is with those two is that they had name recognition and they didn't find it difficult to be booked elsewhere. They knew they had a fallback. These two, I guess, don't. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong, but that is how I'm seeing it at this point. So we will see if my words come true, and I'll be keeping a close eye on the story. But until then, please like, comment, subscribe. I will see you for the next video, which is going to be coming out later today.